Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Steph Kershaw. I'm a research fellow at the Matilda Centre for Research in Mental Health and Substance Use, located at the University of Sydney, and I'm also project coordinator for Cracks in the Ice online toolkit, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar. So before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. I'm currently on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I further acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which you are on in today's webinar and pay respects to their elders past and present. So just a few housekeeping things. So this is one in a series of webinars, and you'll receive notifications if you've signed up to our mailing list about when they are. But all our webinars, as participants, you are in listen-only mode, and that means that we can't see or hear you. But you will notice that you've got a Q&A and a chat button on the bottom of your dashboard, and this is where you can type in questions that you have during the webinar and send them through to us. And we will have a question and answer section at the end of today's webinar. Also, if you haven't already seen the website, I encourage you to visit cracksintheice.org.au, and we welcome any comments or feedbacks or questions. So I hope you're all looking forward to today's presentation titled Co-Developing Culturally Appropriate Lived Experience Videos about crystal methamphetamine. So we're just waiting on one of our presenters, but we'll get started with Tariq, who is joining us today. So Tariq is the Waliwan man from Coonamble and an Indigenous Engagement Assistant at the Matilda Centre for Research in Mental Health and Substance Use. Tariq has had placement in various roles as part of a number of Indigenous-based organisations over the years and assisting on projects to improve the health outcomes for individuals, families, communities, especially among disadvantaged groups. So thank you so much for joining us, Tariq. I'm going to hand over to you to give the first part of our presentation.
I'll kick things off by giving a bit of background on Cracks in the Ice. So the Cracks in the Ice is basically an online toolkit for resources about crystal methamphetamine. And based on feedback from our original website, we found that there was a need for culturally inclusive resources for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. The project was overseen by an expert advisory group made up of Aboriginal elders, as well as drug and alcohol researchers from across Australia. And we had an overall of 240 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people providing input into the project through focus groups and online beta testing. Telephone interviews were also conducted as part of the website testing. On the slide, you can see a tree figure that represents the different phases of development from the project, from its inception to its future growth. So methamphetamine is associated with high levels of stigma and shame. And during the national consultations, communities shared that hearing lived experience was powerful. And this is also in line with research evidence that hearing from people with lived experience is effective in reducing stigma. Communities wanted to see culturally relevant, honest, real stories that show the person behind the substance and highlighting that recovery is possible. The videos were developed in response to that request. All three stories showed a different part of the picture, and together they helped shift the conversation from shame to understanding. They're not just about highlighting the problems, they're about showing strength, healing, and that people aren't alone in this. When we were testing the website and talking to community during the consultations, one of the main things that kept coming up was we wanted to hear from people that have been through it. Before we even started thinking about filming the videos, we spent a lot of time listening. We did 11 in-depth interviews and 15 focus groups with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people around the country. People shared their experiences and told us what they wanted to see in the videos and how they wanted them to look and feel. A few things came through really strongly, that stories needed to be honest, relevant, and actually reflect real people and real situations. The feedback is what shaped the 3 stories we created. All of the videos are based directly on lived experience, but we use actors to protect people's privacy, and each of the stories show different angles. We had one with someone's personal journey, a parent's perspective, and one from the viewpoint of a health worker. To make sure the stories were created in the right way, we partnered with Garua, a First Nations-led creative agency. They took everything we heard in the consultations and helped bring it all together into the final videos. So I'll just play an example of one of the videos. Let's hope it works.
As a nurse, we give them access to tools that help them if they're ready. We help support them to look at their drug use or habits and how to change and what to change. Some of these supports will be started off here and continued into the community.
Yeah, so before I talk about the reach, I just wanted to show one of the short promo versions we used during the rollout. That one was one of the under 30-second cuts designed for ICTV and social media. It's kind of like a quick snapshot of Morgan, the health worker's story, showing the connection patients and non-judgmental care can shape someone's recovery journey. So the reach, since the launch in February 2025, the videos have been shared through a few targeted channels and partnerships to reach Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. We went through an ICT broadcast and they, showed the shorter versions during prime time for 4 weeks with an estimated reach of over 438,000 viewers. The full-length versions were also added to ICTV's regular programming as part of their invited community content. 13 Yarn promoted the videos through their social media channels, generating more than 64,000 views, as well as shares, saves, and comments. Our rollout through Aboriginal Health TV was also done throughout May and June. This brought the videos into about 170 Aboriginal medical services across Australia, and this was shown in waiting rooms. The platforms were chosen because they are community focused and already used by the audience of the videos. And the approach was about meeting people where they are, at home, on their phones, or in healthcare settings. To support the video launch, a dedicated social media campaign was rolled out across Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, using both paid and organic posts. These posts featured the full-length videos, shorter clips, and key quotes, helping to boost the visibility and engagement. The Cracks in the Ice social accounts saw increased interaction with strong reach, particularly among health workers and community members already following the platform. In addition to the online promotion, a direct mail out was sent to 300 organisations, including Aboriginal medical services, primary health networks, and other community stakeholders. Each of the packs included a printed flyer with a QR code directly taking them to the videos, as well as brochures specifically developed for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. This combined approach helped reinforce the project's goals to make resources as accessible as possible. We received a lot of positive feedback as shown on the slide. There was a few that kind of stuck with me, like the good on you for sharing the story. I hope people that are struggling with ICE read your story and know that helps out there. And another one was talking promotes process and healing, self-care, and self-belief. And obviously seeing those comments was great as it kind of ties into what we set out to do, creating that supportive dialogue that kind of breaks down the stigma. But yeah, on that positive note, I'll hand it over now to Genevieve from Garua.
So Genevieve is our amazing partner from Garua agency, which I'll let her tell you all about. But just to introduce her, she's a proud Worimi woman and respected artist, educator, field builder, film director, and oral historian. And she's recognised as a leader of community engagement and decolonising methodologies in Australia. So welcome. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. And hi, Tariq. Hello. Hello everyone. I'm coming to you from Larrakia country, Gurrumilla, in the very north of the continent. I just want to acknowledge Larrakia people, past, present, and future. We're just on the tail end of a cyclone. We just had a cyclone over the weekend, so there's a lot going on up here at the moment, and yeah, there's a very resilient community of Larrakia people and visitors now who call this place home. And we're all very fortunate to be cared for so beautifully by Larrakia people who do that with such grace. So grateful for them and grateful to be here on this country and be with you today. So just acknowledging where everyone's coming from. And I'm sure many of you are down on the East Coast, but probably we have people from more farther afield as well. I'm part of Garawa. So Garawa is a First Nations storytelling agency. We are all over the country, up here in Darwin, in Naarm, in Gadigal, Wongal, Bidjigal country in Sydney. And my brother and I, Kieran Sator, started Garawa probably about 7 years ago now. And we started Garawa because we believe very strongly in the power of storytelling to make change. So all of my work throughout my career, I started as an oral historian at the Koori Heritage Trust a long time ago, but all of my works, whatever it is, has always used storytelling for change. And, I also coming to you today with an academic background as well, just conscious that this project came out of research and, came out of the University of Sydney. And so another hat I wear is that kind of teaching hat, and I'm currently at RMIT as a post-Indigenous doctoral fellow, I think is the title. But I'm writing my PhD at the moment and I teach a few courses. But having been in the sort of tertiary sector for a while, I used to work at the University of Melbourne as well. I know what powerful research occurs in institutions and how difficult it can be to sometimes share that research more widely. And this project's an extremely good example of that. We were approached by Stephanie and Tariq some time ago to create films based on testimonies from their research. So the research was very broad and, very important. There's not many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families who haven't been touched by methamphetamine in some way. I know in my own family we have stories of that. And so when we were approached to work on this project, we could see how deeply significant this work is, to get appropriate content out to our communities that wasn't demonizing people who use methamphetamine, wasn't demonizing their families, and was actually based in real lived experience. There's a huge power in that. And so we were really excited to be engaged on this project because we could see the potential. And for us, because we work a lot in documentary, we do like a range of different documentary projects, and we work with a whole range of different partners all across the country to share stories of the work that they're doing. But we hadn't necessarily done a kind of scripted project before. So for us, it was a really exciting challenge. This project is documentary in form because it's based on real lived testimonies, but we were finding a really creative way to make that content more dynamic and accessible to people. So we undertook a bit of a process of scripting, which is drawing from the testimonies and all the amazing work of this research project to pull out the stories. And that's our skill set is one of our skill sets is storytelling. Our other skill set is really working with community and working in ethical, non-extractive ways. We're known for our work as sort of being relational rather than extractive, and that's something that we bring to all of our projects is a kind of decolonizing approach to content creation. And that's not just part of our process, it's part of who we are, and it's so crucial to our ethics that everything that we work on is actually culturally strengthening, is building capacity, and is actually making social change. So this project definitely ticked all those boxes. So we worked through the scripts and found the sort of content that worked well for these films, which ended up being 3 films. And this was done very closely in collaboration with the research project, who knew the content really well, knew all the sensitivities, knew how the stories had to be held. So we'd send scripts and it'd be a sort of back and forth process. And the the message we got, really strongly throughout that process is, and something we're kind of aware of as well, is how negative portrayals of people using methamphetamines have been, how much damage has been done through those kind of negative and violent representations of people who are, suffering from an addiction. So it was really important that these films didn't step into any of that territory, that the storytelling was really positive. And once we had the scripts finalized, we casted the films with some amazing First Nations actors. And that was a really easy process because there's so much talent, but also the right sort of people came forward. And it was a really profound experience for everyone throughout the production because the stories were so real. So actors who were reading the scripts were saying, this is actually my lived experience, so which is, different to a lot of film production when, someone who's removed from the experience might be writing about what they think someone's going through. This was actually very deeply from the lived experience. And sometimes there were a few different characters that we'd drawn into one, but it made for very powerful content. So it was quite, it was quite an emotional experience for some of the people involved in the filming because it was intersecting with their own life. But there was also like just a lot of happiness that this content was being made in such an authentic way, and that these stories are actually getting out there and people would have access to them. Because I think, having, gone through some of this myself, as I said, in my own family, it's very hard to know where to access information or where to access, content and content that you really want to watch and is engaging. So I think what we ended up being able to make were 3 really beautiful films. And you'll see when you watch them, if you haven't already, that there's a lot of visual beauty in them. They're very they look really stunning. They're really warm. And that all of that's really deliberate in terms of our storytelling process, is moving away from those negative representations and creating a sense of warmth and connection and humanity as well, because methamphetamine users have been dehumanized through a lot of the content that's been made about them, the way they're represented in the news. So it's really important that this content was really, rehumanizing and positive. So yeah, I think someone else is probably going to talk to the impact of these films, but for us, yeah, it was a great experience to make them. We, invested a lot of ourselves and time into this project because we could see its value, and because Garawa is really focused on making social change, and it's been amazing that there's been, more than 1 million views of this content. Like, it speaks so strongly to its power, and that to us is, the greatest gift when we make something and it's actually being seen and people are accessing it and speaking to them. So we're really excited to do more projects like this, and can definitely see that gap in those tertiary institutions, and that all that sort of rich research people are doing, as I said, not necessarily being communicated more broadly. So for this was an opportunity to sort of test that idea, and it's something we're really keen to keep doing because we can see the potential to take what was really an amazing, rigorous research project and then make sure that that's communicated back to the community as a resource. So it really is, a very sort of ethical project in that way, because it's giving back to the people who actually gifted their stories and making sure that that content is accessible to them and to their communities. So we're really proud to have been part of this project, really grateful for the opportunity, and happy to answer any more questions people may have about the film process. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you found the process, Genevieve, from the creative agency aspect. Was there anything that sort of reflecting on the project that changed your perceptions of methamphetamine, or how you and the team had thought, or yeah, anything like that?
I don't know that it like shifted our understanding. I think because as I said, we have our own lived experience of methamphetamine use within our own family. Um, but I think, yeah, it really just emphasized sort of what we know about these kinds of projects, that ultimately storytelling is really healing, and what I was surprised by was how close some of the people involved in the project, how close they were to those stories, like how much it actually, blew them away that they were, reading or performing these transcripts that were actually almost word to word their experience. That was unexpected, and the potential that comes from healing through that process of, seeing your own story shared and kind of normalized as a user or a family member or a health worker is incredibly healing for people. And that was palpable during the shoot, how much this meant. And that, feeling of sort of authenticity gave everything extra strength in terms of our process of filming together. And yeah, that's the work we really like to do. It's not is your work that is, shifting people, shifting individuals, either through being represented in, positive and powerful ways, or through having their own experiences recognized. Yeah, it's really powerful work. That's what the work we like to do. And so that was what we experienced through this process. So none of the content was new to us, really. Like, I guess the health worker content I wasn't as aware of, because it's, not my space. And it did make me reflect a lot on the struggles people would have in those spaces, and how difficult that must be. But yeah, everything else sort of really resonated with me and with all of us involved. So I directed some of the films, and Kieran directed another one as well. So we, as siblings, also, work closely together on different things, and yeah, had an amazing crew and cast, and pulled in family members to help out as well, on the day. My niece is one of the, well, actually there's a few family members in it, who came and helped on the day, and were in it. So yeah, it was a really collective effort, and everyone jumped in and helped out. Yeah, it was a lot of fun in the end, even though some of the scenes were a bit harder, because people were having to live through some of that trauma, and some of that trauma was theirs as well. But ultimately that was really healing.
Yeah, I think it is interesting and sad when we're talking to people about methamphetamine, how many people have been affected, but so few want to share their stories because they're really worried that they're alone and that they'll be judged or thought of differently because of that. And so I think, really these videos help to cut through some of that stigma around methamphetamine and share that people aren't alone. Was there any kind of content or avenues in the scripting and the filming that you'd be keen to pursue further, Tariq or Genevieve? Were there any other perspectives that you would like, to develop potential videos around?
Yeah, for sure. I think it would be good to have the perspective of a woman with lived experience, because obviously, I guess the experience is so diverse, and yeah, that I feel like there also needs to be a story so then they could feel like they're seen. Also, I think it would be a good idea to have kind of a situational um, video of maybe like how to kind of talk to someone or a loved one about crystal methamphetamine use in obviously a non-stigmatizing way or a non-judgmental way. And yeah, I feel like open a healthy dialogue where you can still obviously maintain your boundaries, but still be there for people that you love.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Mm.
I think you could, yeah, model that in a film, like actually have
Mm.
that conversation so people can see it. Because, yeah, as I said before, it's really hard when you're in that and you don't have that content available to know even, yeah, how to have a conversation or how to reach across to speak to someone. I can see, Steph, there's a question about the process from
Yes.
Christine. Could I answer that one?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Would you like me
So,
to read it out? It's
yeah,
just
yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Christine would like to know a little bit more about the process. Was it interviews with individuals which were then filmed with little editing, or were the videos scripted from pulling together threads from various interviews? And how much script review was there before filming?
Yeah, so Christine, it was the second. So it was interviews from the research, which I can't talk to. These two could talk more about it, and also the process of permissions. But as the filmmakers, we got the anonymized transcripts. So it's just we knew what kind of role people had, whether they were family member or a user or health worker. And there were a number of different statements from different people, and then we kind of edited that down because from full transcripts into sort of narratives, and then again and again and again. Like it was quite a process of kind of workshopping to then create a single narrative drawn from multiple threads that we thought could work filmically. So we're really, in a way, writing narrative films, but with, you know, the overall thread was the narrator, which was all actual lived experience, people's actual voices.
Yeah, and we
And
wanted to
Tariq,
kind of keep the quotes and I guess, the interview transcripts as true to its original source as possible. So then that way it's not kind of, yeah, getting misconstrued or taken a different type of way.
Mm.
So they feel heard. Yeah.
and so how many in-depth interviews were there in total, Tariq, with people that we used the transcripts from?
Oh, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it was a fair few.
I think it was close to 10 or 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had quite a lot of material to work with. But I guess, Genevieve, one of the unfortunate things was we were restricted in the time length of the videos. There was a lot more content that we could have included that we were keen to. And I guess that kind of goes into the next question around were there any sort of key messages that were common across the stories that the speakers wanted to get across to the audience? And what do you think some of those key messages were?
That I would say recovery is possible. And then it's also, we tried to push as much as possible, like obviously the destigmatizing and not judgmental care of it all. But yeah, did you want to add anything in, Genevieve?
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
in terms of
thinking
filming?
about the all the other content because I just was remembering that process and how much, because there was
There was a lot
absolutely
of back and forth.
much. You do another, like, 10 films definitely from all of that content. And it was really difficult to let go of some stuff because it was really compelling material. But yeah, you have a certain budget you have to work within, and if you're dramatizing, it's like it's really expensive process. So we did it as cheaply as possible. Like I said, using family, using our own homes to film in, like found ways. And even then, I'd say, we invested some money in it as well, just because we really believed in the project. So we sort of helped resource it because it's really hugely important work. And yeah, we really wanted to see it out there and done the right way. You're looking as beautiful as it does. Yeah, so yeah, we were really happy to be involved and supporting it. Yeah.
And I think also talking about doing it the right way, I think that was really important. And that's why there was so much reflective process throughout the creating the scripts, making sure that we were being authentic, but also balancing sort of not creating further stigma, etc., towards methamphetamine.
Yeah.
Um, and what was the feedback from community about the impact of being involved in the development of the videos?
Yeah, it's been really positive, all the feedback. Like I said, everyone's really proud of the project. They're really happy to be a part of it. And yeah, we haven't had any negative feedback at all. It's all been really, really positive. But I think again speaks to the time that was taken. Like it took us quite a while, didn't it, to work through the scripts, and that was just being really considered and thoughtful. And you need to take that time. Not sort of rush these kinds of projects that are people's actual lives, in their lived experience. So, we had to take the time, all of us, to do things properly. And then if you do that the right way and you work in that ethical way, then you have a really positive end result, which is what we have.
And I guess that kind of touches on, oh, sorry, Tariq, did you have something else to add to that?
Oh, no, you go. Yeah.
Some of your other work, Genevieve, I know that you're quite passionate and advocate in the space of sharing stories, and just the importance of taking time to do co-design properly. We often hear co-design thrown around in funding opportunities and from organizations, and we know that good co-design takes time. What other sort of components would you say are really important in that process?
Well, I had a friend, like a colleague, recently who said to me, I wish that word was never invented, co-design. Because
I can understand that. Yeah.
and this is an Aboriginal woman, so it's because now, like, yeah, it's the challenge we have with so many people wanting now to engage with First Nations people and knowledge and stories, that there's a huge desire to engage. But the question is, how do we engage, and how ethical is that engagement? And is it extractive? Is it, what does it look like? This is the sort of things that I teach in my course, is how to do effective ethical collaboration, and how not to be extractive or colonial in the way that we engage with each other, because that's the society we're in. And so, and sometimes that's the institutions we're in as well, that, can demand a certain way of working or a certain way of connecting. So it's entirely possible to move outside of those extractive colonial frameworks. But there's a lot to be considered. And, having come, like I said, from a tertiary environment, I saw a lot of projects that were very much top-down projects, research projects that weren't ground up. And really, if you're doing this work in the right way, they should be ground up, and they should be supporting the aspirations of communities. They should be led by communities and not led by researchers so much. So, it's a delicate sort of balance, and a lot of people get it right, a lot of people get it wrong. But really, the work should be supporting the aspirations of community members
Yeah,
first.
absolutely.
And then you can bring all your considerable resources as a university into actually supporting community aspirations, and that's when we make beautiful work and profound change. So that requires people to give up some of their power and their ways
Yeah.
of working, and also their Western cultural frameworks, which are largely invisible, and work in different ways. So First Nations values and ways of working are much more relational, much more ethical, much more reciprocal. So, our ways of working have a lot of value for everyone, actually. So that's what we uphold in Garawa. That's how we work. And that's the kind of that's what I teach people to uphold as well in their work in my university position, but also in my other company, Shifting Ground, where we do this kind of training to support people to make these shifts in their own practice.
Yeah, and it is quite hard, I guess, as you say, like a lot of those Western frameworks are invisible. They're kind of drummed into us at, university, and you don't really realize until you start working with communities, oh, there is a different way to think about this. There's a different way to approach issues, or yeah, you don't have to follow the steps A, B, C, D. You can sort of think and move more iteratively and be more responsive.
Yeah, and it's because those Western cultural frameworks aren't named, they're just how we do things. They're just normal, and
Yeah.
everyone else is othered, but really what we have to start to do is actually identify those Western cultural frameworks that have their own ways of working, like around perfectionism or stress on the written word, not there's all these things that actually are part of sort of Western white cultural frameworks that need to be shifted and needs to be, space for other cultural ways of being, doing and knowing. So, that's the challenge, I think, now. And why is colonization so negative? It's a big question.
That's a very big question.
A lot of questions.
But colonization is, settler colonization, like what we're in Australia and the US and New Zealand and Canada. They are very negative systems because they are designed to destroy and disappear the Indigenous peoples of the land in order for the settlers to take that land. So just by their very nature, those frameworks
Yes.
are deeply negative, so our work of decolonization is to shift those systems. But yeah, unfortunately, that's part of the global story, isn't it? That colonization has impacted many, many countries all across the globe. Um, Settler colonialism has its own particular features because it's uploading or dispossessing Indigenous people. But it's really important that we have these conversations and start to name the systems we're in and identify them and understand them. And unfortunately, in our society, there's not a lot of literacy given to people around colonization or race or any of the things that are actually really important in how we live in this society, but also connect with one another.
And I think also with colonization, what struck me is that whenever people come in, and whenever settlers, they always come in with this is how things should be done. They never really consider the people that are already there or the knowledge that's already there. They automatically want to change it to their way. And having been a researcher and having learned over time working with different communities the importance of hearing other people's perspectives and hearing what knowledge other people have and how we can build things together. I think with colonization, we often forget just how much knowledge was kind of pushed down, or there was only one way of thinking that was really instituted, and we need to be just mindful of other ways that we can do things.
Yeah, to get to the positive things,
Yeah.
we need to
And
actually understand and recognize and admit to the negative things that we have around us, those negative systems of power, because they still exist and they're still impacting people's lives every day, in a really negative way. Like where I live in the Northern Territory, 100% of the juvenile detention population is Aboriginal, so it's in Darwin very much on the front line of the ongoing effects of colonization. So, yeah.
yeah. Tariq, do you have any reflections on, how you think that this project has helped sort of break down some of those barriers or increase receptiveness to looking at things from a different perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, most of this work was basically, from community. Like we kind of worked around, I guess, their needs, not the other way around. And pretty much everything feedback wise we took into the script, and even with working with Genevieve, and obviously that iterative process of just going back and forth to kind of walk that line of people feeling represented in the story while also kind of having our kind of over the top fear of stigma, and then kind of having all of that process. But yeah, I think and even all the meetings we had with the AIGs, and yeah, just trying to find the most culturally safe way of making these videos, and obviously having people feel represented.
Yeah, I think you guys did a great job of that. Like you were so conscious all the way through of the stigma, and I think it really helped us to understand what we're up against, like
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
strong that stigma is. Yeah, and I think and how we responded to that, yeah, visually and in the way the stories are held. Like I think we all did a really incredible job of that. Yeah. But
Yeah.
we could feel what you were holding in terms of that,
Yeah.
having, the pressure and the responsibility,
Yeah.
of
Mhm.
those stories that you were holding. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the questions that was big for us when we started and when we, began working with you and Grua was around whether to use real people telling their stories or whether to use actors telling these sort of stories based on real life perspectives and scripts. And I guess we went down the avenue of using or choosing to use actors to portray because we were particularly concerned about stigma and we didn't want anyone to feel put on the spot about it. But, from your experience, Genevieve, how do you think that that is a good approach if there are some of these issues that are quite sensitive? Um,
And I think
and
currently in the current social environment, it's the only approach, and this
yeah,
is because it's the online environment is like very dangerous, and increasingly so. And, post referendum, but also, all the different shifts we're experiencing in the world right now means that it's not a safe space, I think, for that kind of content when there's so much stigma around it. And you wouldn't want to put
yeah,
someone in a position where they're presenting their story and then they're getting all this online hate. Like, I just think it would be so
yeah,
damaging. We had a similar situation with another project where it was working on a campaign and the client wanted, yeah, real stories of race and racism, and we made a
mhm,
similar decision. In the beginning, that's what we're meant to be doing. And as we looked into it more and more, and we talked to a few people, we're like, if we're putting this content online, how do we protect people? What's in place to protect them? How do you do that? And there are, we've had collaborators in the film industry who've done a lot of work on this, like a friend who made a beautiful film about a trans person, like the amount of preparation they had to do to protect that person and their family and the community was
yeah,
it was a whole project in itself. But we made the decision on this other project not to put people's lived experiences online because we just didn't want to do that to people. So similar process, we recorded testimonies, and it was actually because it was about race and racism. We did a workshop about race and racism for all the participants. So they, to strengthen everyone's understanding of race and build their literacy. And then we did recorded interviews, and we were going to pull all the threads like we did in the Cracks in the Ice project, but we ended up keeping the stories whole, just
yeah,
because they ended up being that just was better use of the content, and then we've animated them. So
yeah,
yeah, so I think your sense was right. I don't think it would be a good idea the way the online world is at the moment. It's not a safe place for people to present something that should be healing. I think this this is a much, much better approach. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's great to know that because we weighed up and down, didn't we, Tariq, about what was the more ethical and right way to do it. Because we didn't want people to feel like we were taking their stories and using them for something that wasn't how they intended it. Um, and have you found through your work, Genevieve, if there's any sort of difference between using actors or using sort of more animations or
And there's a question about that too.
yeah.
That someone's saying that these kinds of health stories are often narrated over animations. Um, yeah, and they're saying the person saying, I think using actors is much more effective. And I think I agree. I think this process was, of making cracks in us was different. It's not the normal approach, as this person said. And you're saying, normally it's animation, and I think it's almost a bit overused. That animation approach, like people just sort of switch off a little bit. And you've got to think about how much content people are consuming now. Holding their
Yes.
attention is really difficult. Their attention span's shortened. They're getting content all the time from everywhere. So you've really got to make it compelling, and this is the interesting thing about sort of health promotion, which is such an important um, you have such an important role to play, in our society, that people get the right information, that they're accessing it, that they're engaging in with it, that they're sharing it. So I think, yeah, we need to sort of step it up a little bit, which is what we've done with this project, And as I said, we actually invested a bit more because we wanted to test the model too, and we wanted to actually try to make it like a film shoot and really dramatize it and bring in really high class actors and to see how effective this could be. And yeah, the results were pretty amazing. So this is something we'd love to explore more and try more, this kind of dramatic representation of this kind of research.
Yeah. And I think it was also just so beautifully done. I remember when we were going through the storyboarding process, balancing even just the way the light reflected on someone's
Yeah.
face to bring in, that kind of inspiration and that message of hope. Was really powerful. So yeah, it's been an
Yeah.
amazing
And the
collaboration.
beauty as well. Like
Yes.
when you're presenting hard content, you have to have something really beautiful to draw people in. And I've learned that through filmmaking. Like I made a film about domestic violence and sexual violence, and it's almost people can't you can't almost take those sort of stories in. They're so hard to hear. But if you create beauty through visuals and music and sound, you can give people a space to actually connect with the content. It makes it more accessible for them. So there's tools that filmmakers use to sort of
Yeah.
create that kind of content and make it work.
If you had your time over again, Tariq and Genevieve, is there any one thing that you would change or explore further, other than obviously having a much larger budget so that we could make the films longer and even more detailed? But yes, sticking with kind of the same, wanting to make short videos, what's the one sort of thing that yeah, would love to
I think
change
I
or
would
explore?
I think I would have set more time. I think
Oh,
I don't think we expected, I guess, the process of back and forth with the script as long as it was, because obviously we wanted to kind of get it right, and yeah, I feel like we should have had a bit more time for that set aside.
yeah.
Yeah, that took longer than we expected to. I think it's just that we're process,
Yeah.
like, but we're also very much of the mind that things take as long as they take,
Yeah.
and we you have to allow, especially with this kind of content and the sensitivity of the content, like it's just really important that it's done right. And if that takes longer, it does. Yeah. So yeah, there's nothing, I don't think we'd change anything. I think we had a great experience making these films, really proud of the outcome. Um, yeah, looking forward to doing more. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you both so much for your time today. It's been lovely to chat through the videos, and I put a link to the videos in the chat for everyone. So feel free to check them out at any stage. that's all that we've got time for today. Thank you everyone for persevering with us. If you have any other further questions, please feel free to reach out to us at any stage. And apologies again for all the technical issues. Zoom obviously knew that I was feeling confident going into November and thought, no, I will trick you. Now, if today's presentation has raised any concerns for you or you'd like any other further resources, please feel free to visit Cracks in the Ice at cracksintheice.org.au. And Garua has a beautiful website as well if you'd like to find out more about their work, garua.com if I'm not right.
It's GARUWA.com, Garua. Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Tariq and Genevieve. It was wonderful to chat with you. And we'll be holding more webinars throughout the year and next year. So if you'd like to be kept up to date, please join our mailing list. Thank you all again today and have a great day. Thanks. Bye. Bye.